Hello, New York Giants fans. Welcome back to the Everything New York Giants podcast with New York Giants fangirl. My name is Adrianna. I'm your host. And today we are going to talk about the Darren Waller retirement, updates to injuries, and of course, recap OTAs because now that they are officially over, it is summer for the Giants until training camp starts in July. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So let's talk about Darren Waller, of course, first. So in a move that I think we all saw coming at this point, he officially retired. So with that being said, there are 6 tight ends currently on the roster, and the Giants also brought in 2 other tight ends for workouts. So we'll talk about those guys in a second. The current tight ends on the roster are obviously Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson, Lawrence Cager, who they re-signed this offseason, and then they also have Tyree Jackson, Jack Stoll, and Chris Manhertz. The last 2 they also signed this offseason as well, both veterans in the league. So there's still a lot of options there at tight end. Ultimately, I think the final 3 that make the roster are going to be obviously Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson. Lawrence Cager is having a good camp, but for some reason, I just feel like he's not going to make it. And if he continues on the way that he's going, maybe he will. But I just feel like he's been okay. Not great, not bad. And I feel like that really gives the opportunity for someone like Jack Stoll or Chris Manhertz to come in here and really make an impression. And for veteran tight ends, that's what I would like to see, especially knowing that Bellinger and Theo Johnson are both on the younger side and Johnson is just a rookie. So to have that veteran presence of someone who's been in the league and has good experience blocking and things like that, which Cager's not really great at, I personally would like to see one of them step into that role. So we will see as training camp goes on next month. But for now, it's all up in the air. But I think we all know that Bellinger and Johnson are going to be number 1 and number 2 when it comes to tight ends. So outside of that, let's talk about some of the tryouts that the Giants have had over the last couple days. So the first one, and one of the most important ones, is veteran cornerback Trey Herndon. He comes to us from the Jags. He was with them since 2018, and he's been okay, not great, not bad, but he had a good tryout. He had an interception in yesterday's practice, I believe, off a tipped pass from DeVito. It was tipped by Darian Beavers, and he ended up making the catch. So they liked him enough to sign him. It's a low-risk, high-reward signing. I don't think that by them signing him, it means they're not bringing in any other veteran cornerback. So before anyone panics, don't freak out just yet. I think that they will continue to bring in more options, and I think that they will bring in more veterans, especially at the cornerback position, and especially knowing that they saved $11.6 million in cap space after Darren Waller retired. So he's going to compete on the outside with Cordell Flott. Those 2, as of right now, are going to be the rotation opposite Tay Banks. I also saw that my beloved Darnay Holmes was also getting reps on the outside with the ones. Not a lot, but enough to really just make me not thrilled about it. So I knew when they re-signed him, he was going to be a special teams guy, and I felt like, we could see him play some defensive snaps if they didn't bring in anyone else, but I would like them not to do that. I don't really care if he has a good camp. I need Cordell Flott to step it up big time here, okay? I am rooting for you. I need you to win the outside position, please. Unless they bring in a vet, then it still would be great for Flott. Either way, we need him to step up, but you know what I mean. Just less Darnay Holmes, please. Some other tryouts. The first one, running back Jacob Sailors. He is a UFL running back. He had a great season last year with the St. Louis Battlehawks. I got some good insight on him today from one of his former coaches. He is a good pass catcher, and he is excellent on special teams. So obviously with the rules changing in special teams, I definitely think that there's room for growth there. We have a new special teams coordinator this year after they let go of Thomas McGahee this offseason. So with all of those changes being made, I would say this, I think out of all of the other guys that they brought in, there's 3 other players. I think that he's the most likely to get signed after Trey Herndon. So as always, I will keep you guys posted on that. If you don't follow me on Instagram, it's at New York Giants Fangirl. I post all of these updates as soon as they happen on Instagram. It's the first place that I post, so make sure you check out my Instagram too. Next up, they brought in 2 tight ends, one of them being Noah Togai, he was a UDFA in 2020. The Eagles signed him. He's 6'4", 224 pounds, and basically since 2020, he's been on and off practice squads. He hasn't started any games. He's only played in a couple games and didn't have any stats. So I don't expect him to come in here and compete with some of the guys that we already have. I don't know what type of tryout he had. There was no follow-up from some of the beat writers in the media that were actually at the practices. So I'm going to go under the assumption that it wasn't good enough to have him signed based on what I've heard about, Trey Herndon and Jacob Sailors. Next up is tight end Jaquarius Spivey. He's 6'5", 220 and an undrafted free agent out of Mississippi State. So he just graduated, I believe, last year. So again, I haven't seen anything on him. I don't expect much or expect the Giants to sign him at this point. The last one so far, and again, during training camp, they will continue to do this, but the last one that I saw during OTAs this week is offensive lineman Kellen Deach, 6'7", 300 pounds, and he basically has been on and off practice squad since 2022. He was with the Dolphins, Bears, Steelers, and Browns. So again, I love that they do this. I think the more competition and the more people that you can bring in is obviously better. I don't expect them to sign everyone that they bring in, but I think it's just helpful to continue to bring guys in and see what happens. Let's move along to injuries, because there were a couple so far during camp, although it sounds like only one of them might be serious. So let's knock on wood that that's the end of it from now until the season, because we cannot afford to have some major injuries over here. So let's start with Daniel Bellinger. It was noted by media members that he was on the side yesterday and he wasn't working in groups and wasn't in the 11-on-11. So obviously I think everyone got a little suspicious, and someone asked Daboll about it. And he said that something happened with him a few weeks ago, but he's fine. He will be good for training camp. So I think that they are being extremely cautious with anyone who has had any type of injury, which they should be based on the luck that this team has had when it comes to injuries. So I think it's the right time, especially knowing that they have 6 weeks from now until camp to really heal and continue their rehab and do any sort of treatments and anything that they can do to get them ready for training camp, be 100%, and know that if they start practicing full steam ahead like they do in camp, obviously without the hitting, that they're going to make it through camp in one piece and be okay. So I'm not worried about Bellinger unless we see him on the side at camp. Then we can start to be concerned. From now until then, I would say don't worry about it. And the same thing goes for Darius Slayton, who collided with a defender yesterday. He came up a little slow, but he looked okay once he got up, and I have not seen any reports that he didn't practice today or wasn't involved in any of the 11-on-11s or anything like that. So again, I would say don't worry about him. Bryce Ford-Wheaton left the field with an injury. The trainer was checking his right arm. And again, I didn't see any follow-up here about any issues of him not being back in the mix. So I think that he ultimately is going to be fine. This was one of the worst of the injuries. Wide receiver Chase Cotta left on a cart, so there hasn't been any update as of today. This was yesterday when that happened. He landed on his shoulder attempting to make a catch. So I will keep you guys posted again if I hear anything about that. Obviously, there's a lot of depth at wide receiver, so in my opinion, I felt like he didn't really have a chance to make the team. He was maybe going to be a practice squad guy, but you never know. So we'll see if he comes back for training camp and he's ready to play and if he's able to compete. Last up for the injuries, Evan Neal, Daniel Jones, and Aaron Robinson finally is going to be ready for training camp. So that is the plan and the hope right now. Obviously, I don't expect anything to happen to them over the next 6 weeks while they're rehabbing and not doing anything crazy. So let's all keep our fingers crossed. I don't care whether or not you like Jones or Neal or Aaron Robinson. Put those feelings aside. We want health on this team across the board, whether it's the starter or the third string, because we need healthy depth. So I hope that they are all ready to go. Listen, I know everyone's upset with Evan Neal and disappointed in his career so far, and I am right there with you, don't get me wrong. In my opinion, I would like to see him transition to guard right now, like just start letting him play guard right now or when training camp starts, instead of, having him at right tackle, but he has a short leash. Well, then what's the point? He's coming off an injury. He had 2 god-awful seasons. I know the coaching staff is going to help, but realistically, how much are they going to help him from someone who had a god-awful first 2 seasons, and now you expect him on his short lease, which I don't know if it's 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever they consider a short leash, has not been confirmed by anyone. So, like, why put that amount of stress and pressure on him instead of saying, we have Jermaine Illuminor, he can start at right tackle, and we're going to put your butt in the guard position, and now you're going to have a strong tackle on your right side to help you. So you just have to work on being a guard, which you did in college. So, I don't know. That is very frustrating to me. Obviously, they're going to do whatever they want to do. I just don't understand it. We will see what happens, but the plan, as of right now, is that he is going to be the starting right tackle at training camp and assumedly during week 1. So, looking forward to that. Speaking of right tackle, oh, this is also really going to piss me off. Joshua Zudu, okay? The kid who's a guard. The kid who played left tackle last year when Andrew Thomas went down. And listen, I don't want to blame people for other players' injuries. I don't think that's fair. I also don't think it's fair that the coaching staff decided that he's been a guard in college and in his first year with the Giants, but let's go ahead and move him to a tackle when Andrew Thomas is out, and then Daniel Jones got fucking mauled, and that's when he tore his ACL. So, you know. He also, I believe, was playing left tackle when Tyrod got injured. So, I just, like, maybe tackle is not the right position for him. I don't know what they're thinking there. I know the assumed thinking right now is, well, we don't have a swing tackle, because they have Illuminor playing at guard. But I think it was supposed to be Matt Nelson, the tackle that they signed this offseason, and he's like coming off an injury or something and not ready to go. I don't know if he's going to be ready for training camp. Let's all hope so, because I'm going to lose it if I continue to see Joshua Ezeudu at right tackle. Because he is not better than Evan Neal. He is certainly not better than Illuminor. So what are we doing here? Put him at guard. That's the position that he played. We have a new offensive line coach, and let's hope that the new offensive line coach can just help him at his natural position, because it wouldn't be the worst thing if we had a good backup guard. What an idea. I can't. Anyway, someone else who was with the ones is Tyrone Tracy. So I think that's really interesting. I think ultimately, look, the ones right now is, what's his name? Drew Lock, because Jones is obviously not in the 11 on 11s, and he won't be until camp. So, but I think it's interesting. I'm glad he's getting those reps with the ones. I think it's, you know, they're not worried about Singletary, so it's not like he's fighting for his position for Singletary. I think if anything, it will be a rotation or a battle between him and Eric Gray for the running back 2 position behind Singletary. So I'm really excited to see Tyrone Tracy and Eric Gray in training camp, because I thought last year that Gray was a good back. I think they did him dirty having him return kicks. That is not his specialty. He is not a punt returner. So let's just let him be a good running back and thrive there, which when he was in at back, he was not bad. So I expect him to be better this year, assuming that the offensive line is also going to be better, which I understand is a large assumption to make, but at this point, like, they just cannot possibly get worse than last year. So they were historically bad. So, like, you have to live under the assumption that they're going to be better, because they can't possibly be worse, you know? So I'm excited for the running back competition. There's going to be a lot of good competitions for position groups during training camp, but I think the running back group especially is going to be fun to watch. Also knowing that he used to be a wide receiver, so he's got great hands. So I'm very curious to see if we see any sort of exciting plays, if you will, with Tyrone Tracy. So stay tuned for that. Already mentioned this, but my boy Darnay Holmes getting outside reps, you know. Love that for all of us. All I have to say is, and I know he's mostly played slot corner, based on his slot corner play, I don't expect him to be great on the outside. And I just will be extremely concerned if he is the one who wins the competition. And if he is that good and the coaching staff feels that good about him, I will still have my concerns, although I'm not the expert here. But I will maybe have a little bit of trust, but also be horrified if he ends up winning that position. I don't see it though, so I'm not going to jump to conclusions here. McLeod was getting slot reps in with the ones, which I don't think is a surprise to anyone. McLeod did a pretty good job last year, and obviously with Flott being moved from the slot to the outside, that's where he's better. So I hope that he takes a big step forward. But I think McLeod will be good in the slot, and we'll see how that rotation goes too, because cornerback Drew Phillips, the kid that they drafted this past year or this past draft, is also vying for the slot position. So I think that will probably be a good battle. And speaking of Drew Phillips, he had an interception from DeVito's pass, which bounced off of wide receiver Dennis Houston's hands. Phillips dove to catch it. So he's been working in the nickel with the ones and the twos. So excited to see more from Phillips. Again, cornerback as a whole outside of Tay Banks on the outside is also going to be a very interesting and fun competition, I think, to watch this training camp. Let's talk about the offense a little bit, because Wandale, I posted this on my stories, and I'm sure if you guys were on the Giants Instagram, you saw it already, but just a beautiful, beautiful play on a slant from Drew Lock, took it to the house. Wandale is one of those guys that I am so excited about this year. I think you can just tell that he feels so much more confident in his body. Almost 2 years after that ACL injury, I think he finally feels like he's back to himself. And they do say that with ACL injuries, that it does really take time. So for him to be able to do that, especially in the position that he plays, I am just really excited about him. He had a good year last year, and I think that this year he is going to be what I thought Paris Campbell was going to be last year. I think he's going to have an absolutely killer year, and I might even draft him on my fantasy team because I'm a little delusional. I think it's probably not a bad idea, you know? Not going to take him over Justin Jefferson, but like maybe he'll be a bench guy, you know, until the offense proves to me that they can get the ball in their hands. Any more on offense? No, the rest I have here is defense. So let's keep talking. Oh, excuse me. Let's talk about Allen Robinson for 1 second, because he seemed to be a little bit more involved over the last 2 days in OTAs than he was prior. And he caught a touchdown from Tommy DeVito. So I think that him and Bryce Ford-Wheaton are going to be in the rotation for wide receivers 6 and 7. If they keep 7 wide receivers, I could see those 2 guys being the ones that make the spot. I know there's been a lot of talk about Isaiah McKenzie because he's played special teams, but I don't know. I'm not sold on him. I just think that one of those guys is going to have a better chance of making the roster than he does, but time will tell. Free agent Caleb Hayes had 2 pass deflections. Jordan Riley had a strip sack, so he got some snaps with Ryder Anderson to give Dexter a break. So, you know, Dexter, we all know, is obviously going to be in with the ones and going to be the starter. So guys like Jordan Riley, Ryder Anderson, Nacho, helpful to get them in and get some more snaps there. So Jordan Riley, as a rookie last year, had a pretty good season considering what he... considering like the limited amount of snaps that he got and being a rookie. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I think that he ultimately ended up being a good pick. I mean, he was like a 6th rounder. So I feel like if he can make some plays, I'll take it. Next up, let's talk about Graham Gano, because Graham Gano is healthy, and I know everyone is like, why did he give his number to Malik Neighbors, or why are they both wearing the same number? That always happens right now during the camp period until they cut it down to 53. They just don't have enough numbers for everyone. Ultimately, I think that Neighbors is going to switch numbers. I don't see him wearing 9 as a wide receiver. Daniel Jones is not giving up 8 to give to him, so I would like to see him wear 88. I hope that's what he chooses. And Graham Gano, I think, is going to stick with 9. I just think as a wide receiver, like 9 is not really I don't know. I wouldn't pick that as a wide receiver if it were me, clearly. So we'll see what he ends up deciding, but personally, I hope it's 88. But Gano is back. He's healthy, recovered from his injury. He went 7 for 7 during his kicks on a special team period. So When we talked about injuries a lot this past season, there were so many that I think a lot of us even forgot that Graham Gano was one of them, because we basically lost half of our starting offense. So, if not more than that, and of course some players on defense. So I'm excited to know that we have Graham Gano back. He is our kicker. He is healthy and ready to go. And when he is healthy, Graham Gano is unstoppable. So we can be optimistic about something. Last up here, let's talk about the punt returners, because with the new special teams rule and the kickoff rule, there has been some changes and stuff like that have been made. So there's kind of been a mix of different returners. So the first two punt returners that were up were rookie Ayer Asante. So he is a wide receiver. And then Isaiah McKenzie, obviously we talked about him before. So they were doing the punt returns. Then the kickoff return pairs were Devin Singletary and Dante Turbo Miller. So for those of you who forget, Dante Miller was basically an undrafted free agent out of the University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks, and he ran a 4.27 40, so he is fast as hell. So he could be a really good special teamer. So I'm curious to see how that goes, especially during camp. And then the second pair was Tyrone Tracy and Ayer Asante, also for the kickoff returns. And then another pair was Dante Turbo Miller and Wandale, which I don't really feel great about any of our starters doing punt or kickoff returns. I know that the rules have changed, but like, can we just not when you have Gunner, not when you have Dante Miller on the team, like when you have Isaiah McKenzie and these other options, like I would just rather them not to do it. Like Shep didn't need to get injured. He didn't need to be doing punt returns. Darius Slayton didn't need to be doing punt returns. Like, we don't need this, okay? So I would like to see them stop doing that. Because the last pair was Devin Singletary and then Ayer Asante again. So let's not do that with our starting running back, please. Please, I'm literally begging you. I don't care that the rules have changed. Leave it to someone else, okay? Not the starters in our skill positions that we so desperately need to stay healthy, to have a good offense, if everything else goes well. Last up, let's talk about Brian Daboll, because not only did he lose 35 pounds this offseason and is now known as Skinny Dabes, he also has been calling the plays. So this has been talked about a lot over the last year or so. You know, they made that title change to, what's his name, Kafka. And Kafka was asked about it today. And of course, Kafka is going to, be smart about what he said to the media and basically just said, if Daboll calls the plays, I will support him and I will support the plays that he calls, which no surprise there. So I think ultimately I'm okay with it. I just still have my concerns, and my concerns are the fact that he still is a young head coach. He still has a lot to work on as a head coach, clock management being a large one of those. And I know he's working on his emotions on the sidelines and stuff like that, which I think is great. But I just am worried that it's one more thing to add to his plate. And I don't think there's a such thing as a perfect head coach, but I do think that when you already have some concerns and some issues that you've had in the past, adding something like play calling onto it, I'm a little worried about how that's all going to go this year. But what I did learn is that he was actually calling the plays during the second half of the Cardinals game, and that's, I think, part of the reason why Daniel Jones looked the best he's pretty much looked since maybe he's been a Giant. So I think that if Daboll calls plays, I think that we will see a good offense. I do still feel like Kafka would be fine calling the plays. Last year, I think he didn't have anything to work with. I don't care who was calling plays last year. The team was a disaster with all those injuries. And, when you have a starting tackle and guard who literally came off the couch to play, I don't have big expectations for the play caller. So that's just me. But it looks like Daboll's probably going to end up doing it. He's been doing it during OTAs. I don't think that all of a sudden during camp they're going to change their mind and go back to Kafka. So Daboll said they will make up the final decision during, I think, either during or after training camp. So that'll be coming soon. But no one's going to be surprised to find out that Daboll is going to call the plays throughout the season. So that's it. That rounds it out for About Now. I will have some more podcasts coming to you guys over the next couple weeks as we try to entertain ourselves until training camp starts. And then we will do training camp recaps. Then before you know it, it's going to be preseason. And then, oh my God, it's going to be football season. So hopefully it's going to be a fun one. It's the 100th year of the Giants. At least we will have something to celebrate if the team stinks. So again, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at New York Giants Fangirl. And I will be back soon with another podcast. Subscribe here, Everything New York Giants, and I'll see you guys soon.